Hello and welcome to this art workshop provided by Arts for All Nevada and Washoe County School District. Today we're going to do a picture of a cake sitting on a plate on a table in a room. So what we are actually trying to do is create a three-dimensional shape, and we're going to use an illusion to make it look like it's sitting in a space, in a real space. So what you're actually going to need is a piece of watercolour paper. It does need to be watercolour paper because it doesn't work. The pens don't work on other paper as well. We're going to need a paintbrush, water, masking tape, a large plastic cup to help us draw around, pencil, potentially a ruler, some water-based pens, Crayola or the Crazy Art work well, and a set of wax crayons. Let's put them all to the side so that we can start. And the artist we're going to look at today is an American artist by the name of Wayne Thiebaud, and he is very famous for drawing things that you will automatically recognise, and this one's called Cakes, and it was done in 1963. He uses oil on canvas, so the actual oil paint is used really thickly, so it almost looks like icing when you see the real picture, so it gives you a real feel that you could probably eat them. His main interest was to draw geometric shapes, and to make them more interesting he actually made them into cakes and pieces of pie and lollipops and ice creams, things that would remind you of your childhood and reminded him of his childhood. He grew up in California. In 1951, he took a teaching post in Sacramento. So as well as teaching art, he was also an artist. And during that time, he really experimented with these rows of different cakes that you would recognise. This is one of his quotes. "When you stare at an object as you do when you paint it, there is never a time when you stop learning something about the object. Only then can you take a flat surface and make it into a different world." And that's what we're going to do. We're going to take a flat surface and give it some space so we look like we've actually got some depth to our picture. So the book that I've got you today is called The Cosmic Cafe. It's quite a nice story, but it's also got some rhymes in it. So maybe think about the rhymes and words that could rhyme with some of the words that we've got in it. The Cosmic Cafe. The Cosmic Cafe in the wide Milky Way was the first dairy diner in space. At comet-shaped chairs and bright stars on the stairs and satellites all over the place. Mars Mozzarella, a cheese-loving fella, owned the Cosmic Cafe. He agreed cheese for brunch and baked cheese for lunch and then helped to serve cheese all day. The cafe's best waiter was a whiz with a grater, and he came from a planet named Brie. Together they knew every cheese dish and stew, and their cheese sauce was lovely to see. Then one afternoon the man in the moon came to eat at the cafe. "The moon's made of cheese, so don't want that please. I'm looking for something quite sweet." The waiter went red, steam shot from his head, for cheese was his favourite food. And Mars Mozzarella, that cheese-loving fella, thought the moon man was rude. "I'll show him," he thought. "I'll soon fix his sort," and rushed to the kitchen to cook. He started to swear, to dice, slice and whir, and his waiters all stopped by to look. His sweet cake creation soon caused a sensation, the loveliest thing he had baked. It was smooth, round and white, a cosmic delight, like a moon in the shape of a cake. The man in the moon ate the cake with a spoon till nothing was left but white traces. "This cake is a treasure. I must have the pleasure of telling my friend in high places." Soon Mars Mozzarella, that cheese-loving fella, was famous, a Milky Way star. They all knew his name, and everyone came from spaceship, space bus and space car. Now Mars Mozzarella, that cheese-loving fella, has cafes all over the sky. His favourite, they say, is the Cosmic Cafe, but no one has ever guessed why. Still, each afternoon the man in the moon comes in for his favourite treat. The cafe's best waiter hides his cheese grater and brings a moon cake to his seat. But Mars Mozzarella has fooled the moon fella. His special moon cake is a fake. And one day, quite soon, when there's a blue moon, he'll tell him his treat is cheesecake. So this whole story is all about rhymes. So maybe you can think of some more rhyming words. We've got some words to show you today about things that we are going to use in our piece. We are going to look at the words. They're called depth, still life, and perspective. So depth talks about creating the illusion of space in our picture, like it's going back into space. So if I draw my square and I make it a cube, it makes it look like it's going back into the space. And we can even add shading to give it a darker side, or even maybe shadows to give it depth. We can do the same thing with a circle, but if we start shading it, we can make it look like it's an actual sphere, a ball shape, so that it actually looks like it's taking up some space in the paper. A still life is a picture or a painting that's just of objects that are arranged together and painted, and people think about where they go on the paper. I'm just doing cubes, so it could be just shapes, or it could be flowers or fruit. And the case that we're going to look at, or we're going to use today, it's going to be cakes, but making it into an arrangement that is pleasing to look at. Perspective is a way that we use to make depth, to show that we're going into the picture. So things go to a distance, they get smaller. So there's my road going to a vanishing point, it gets smaller on the horizon. If I have a tree, maybe I'm going to have a bigger tree at the front here, and it's going to get smaller as it goes away. Colours tend to be darker the nearer they are, and lighter as they go in the distance. You can also see more detail closer to you are. You won't see as much detail the further they are, and that helps to give us a space in our picture. That gives us some perspective, and we're going to use some of those things in our drawing today. So you need your watercolour paper, and as I said, it does need to be watercolour paper because the pens don't work so well when we get to making them into paint on regular paper. Now we need to make our shape, our geometric shape. The cakes are pretty much circles, but as we're going to look at them, we're going to try and draw it so it looks three-dimensional. So we're going to use our plastic cup as a template, but we're going to squash it. Now, what I found is if I put some masking tape or any other tape around the top of it, it will help the cup not split too much. And then we're going to put some tape over the top of it, and we're going to, wants to roll around this one, we're going to pull it. So we've changed our circle and we've squashed it so that we get an oval shape. And I'm going to put a couple of pieces on there because there's quite a lot of pressure on there to give us our oval shape that we're going to draw around. You don't have to be too perfect, but I found it a really easy way to give us our cake shape that we're going to do. So we're going to turn that over, and we're going to put it sort of towards the top of our paper, but not right at the top. We're going to give us some room, and we're going to go round it. And then we're going to move it down, just sort of in line, and we're just going to draw around the bottom half of it. If you want to, you can use a ruler just to draw the sides. Again, it's a cake, it doesn't need to be perfect. And then we're going to put it on a plate. So just sort of follow the curve as best you can. I always end up drawing quite lightly so that I can change the line if I want to, if I'm not happy with it. And maybe I'm going to have some cream in the middle of my cake this time, so I'm actually going to put some lines there for me to follow. Don't worry too much, it's still going to have the idea of showing our shape is three-dimensional. We've drawn it so that we've actually got the three-dimensional shape in it. And we're going to use an outline first. Now, the outline does not have to be in black. So I'm going to use my wax crayons to do my outline, and I'm going to think about how I'm going to decorate my cake. So I'm going to have some icing or frosting going around it. So I'm going to use some curved lines to go around the outside of my shape. And I'm going to go on the inside. So think about the lines that you want to use to show how your cake's decorated. Oh, and let's do some big lots of frosting or cream in the middle. I think I'm going to make my cake a chocolate cake, so I'm going to outline the rest of it with a brown. Let's do a cherry on the top of mine as well. And I'm going to outline my plate that it's sitting on. So I'm happy with whatever line. Maybe I'm going to put another line in there. Oh, mine broke. So I am pressing quite hard because, like we've done in some of the other pieces, we're going to end up using a resist on this. This line, these outlines, are going to help keep my colours in those shapes. And then you're going to work with your markers, your water-based markers, and you're just going to colour in between these shapes. And it doesn't have to be perfect. We're going to move this around and change it into paint. So I want a lot there, but maybe I'm going to make it a little bit lighter on top, so I'm going to move the lines a little bit further away, just so the paint won't be quite so heavy there. I'm going to fill in with my red inside. Again, if your markers don't work too well, don't worry about it. This is all going to change into paint. It might just be a little bit lighter. Again, if you put more colour in it or press down harder, the colour will be a little bit darker. I'm going to put some yellow on my plate. So we're starting to give the idea that it's three-dimensional by the way that we've drawn, but we are going to think about using some other things to make it look like it's going in the space. I'm going to put a little bit of a shadow under the bottom of my plate to make it look like it's sitting there. I haven't outlined this because I want it to blend a little bit with the table that I'm going to put it on. I may even put a little bit under the bottom of my cake to make it look like it's sitting there. And then we're actually going to put it on a table. Now, you don't have to use the ruler. I've been doing all mine freehand, but if you want to, we're just going to put a line right the way across in pencil to show the back of the table. And then we're going to use the ideas that things are going to go to the centre here. So we're just going to use lines. I'm just going to keep my ruler roughly in the same place and do lines going around it. Roughly at the same distance, but I'm not worrying too much. Let's see, let's do one there. So I'm roughly sort of keeping my centre about there and doing lines around it. And then I'm going to do lines going across so I get my checkerboard. And things get slightly smaller as they go to the distance. So your lines can get slightly closer together. And then if you want to, maybe you could put more of a room in the background there. I'm just going to keep it plain, but maybe you want to put a door or a window, or you decide what you want to do. And then I'm going to use another colour. Let's use green because I haven't used it on my cake. And I'm going to just do a checkerboard design to show my tablecloth. Maybe you want to do something else. Maybe you want polka dots in your tablecloth. Maybe you want it lots of different coloured checks. Maybe you want to put a fork on your table so you're about to eat your cake. You can decide what you want to do. It's your painting. I'm being a little bit more careful with this one. I want there to be lots of colour on the table. So I am following my lines. A little bit there, a little bit there. I think we're pretty good. And then put a colour in the background or whatever you decide to do. but make it look like there's something there, that it's not just white space. Just means that you've thought about the whole of your picture. And what we talk about is we thought about the whole of the composition, what goes on the picture and where it is and what colours go on. So it just makes it look like you've thought about the whole thing. When you've done that, you need your paintbrush and your water. And I would work maybe from the top down because it gets very watery. So all you're going to do is you're going to work over the top and you are going to change your markers into a paint. So you need lots of water. Make sure you keep washing your brush. Where you put more colour on, it will probably be a little bit darker. I didn't do any outlines on the background because I'm not so worried if the paint mixes together. I remember detail isn't as sharp as you go into the distance, so maybe if it blurs a little bit, it'll help to keep us showing some depth or some space in our picture. And then I'm going to work on the cake, and you will see that the wax crayon helps to keep the colours in between the lines, so it won't spread so much. It acts almost like a barrier to it to keep the colours in the space that you want. Oh, sorry, that's my cup clicking. I think the masking tape's coming apart. So work your way around. Make sure you cover all the white so there's nothing showing. And this bit of my chocolate cake's going to look a little bit browner because I've put more colour on it, so it's going to give an idea of the actual side of the cake. When you're painting with the paintbrush, see if you can actually use the tip of it just like you do with a pencil, so that you've got a little bit more control. Even if you're using a thicker paintbrush, the same thing still applies. And hold it just like you do a pencil as well. And then work your way around. I'm going to start doing the plate. And we put a little bit of shadow here so your black will blend in with that yellow. Just remember, just wash your paintbrush if it's getting too dark. If it really bleeds, it's fine. That's okay. These things happen, but it's going to actually add to your piece. And the more water you put on it, the lighter it will become as well. So you can use that within your design as well. I'm going to actually take it a little bit on the outside, so it's going to actually make that ridge look like there's a little bit of depth to it. And then I'm going to start with the background, and I'm just going to follow my lines that I've got there as well. I've used the checkerboard because it helps to create the idea of space on my picture, but if you don't want to do that and you just want it to be plain, just do it plain. You decide what you want to do on your picture. You can use the idea that the colour is darker at the front and it gets lighter as it goes back to give the idea of space, if that's what you want to do. And I'm going to go around the shadow at the bottom here. And again, I'm going to put lots of water on it so that it actually blends in with the table and the tablecloth, and I might even take it a little bit bigger. Okay. So it's pretty wet. It's going to take a little bit of time to dry, so very carefully move it to somewhere you don't want the water rolling, because you'll get drips on it. So very carefully move it to the side and let it dry. If you've done that, there's another activity I can give you to do, and this is just playing around with the idea of showing space, using the idea of things getting smaller as they go in the distance. And also if you overlap them, it automatically shows that that piece is behind them. So I kept the idea of cakes, and what I did was on a piece of paper that I folded into quarters, into 4, I drew a cupcake shape, and the way I started mine was I cut out my cupcake current lines too much. Just a real simple shape. Or maybe you're going to do lollipops or slices of pie or something else. And I kept one at that side, and then I cut the next one a little bit smaller, just following the same idea. I'm actually only cutting one side, and that makes that a little bit smaller. And then I just kept going, and this time I'm actually going to cut the other side so that we keep it fairly, and don't lose too much of the shape of it. But you don't have to do cupcakes, you can do all sorts of things. Okay, so that gives me 4 different cupcakes, and then I just arranged them in their order, and I use my markers just to show the paper at the bottom and then the icing on top, and I use different I do round swirly lines to show that it was covered in icing, and then I just stuck them with the biggest one at the front and working back to the smallest one behind. So you can play with that, just another idea to show space or depth on your piece of paper. Thank you for joining me today, and I hope to see you next time. Bye.